Let me tell you a true story about Kiana Brooks, a black female CEO who quietly visited her own bank branch, was belittled and branded a fraud, then flipped the script in just 10 minutes. She fired the entire racist staff and launched the groundbreaking Equity First reform program. Kiana Brooks pushed through the revolving doors of Stellar Trust Bank's flagship branch with the measured stride of someone used to holding rooms together. Her gray blazer was deliberately nondescript, her low-heeled shoes scuffed just enough to look every day, and the diamond studs she normally wore to board dinners were locked in a safe 3 blocks away. Today was an experiment in anonymity. If the branch staff passed, no one outside these walls would ever know. If they failed, the cleanup would be swift and public. She checked her watch, 12:03 p.m., and joined the noon crowd pulsing toward the marble reception podium. The greeter, a nervous 20-something named Parker, slid a visitor badge across the counter without meeting her eyes. "Premier Lounge is straight back, ma'am. No request for ID, no mention of limits." Kiana thanked him and made a mental note front desk protocol pass. The Premier Lounge sat behind frosted glass panels like a jewelry box nobody wanted fingerprints on. Inside, polished tables gleamed beneath recessed LEDs, and the only sound was the hiss of an unattended espresso machine steaming water into nothing. 10 patrons dotted the leather chairs' suits, earbuds, polished fingernails tapping at phones. No one looked up when Kiana chose the center table and opened her slim folio. Perfect. She wanted witnesses, not accomplices. The branch manager arrived less than a minute later, heels tapping a clipped staccato on the stone tiles. Susan Langley, 42, blonde bob, reputation for efficiency, sharpened into impatience, stopped at Kiana's table like a traffic cop. "Afternoon," she said, voice cool as a bank vault. "For a withdrawal of that size, we'll need tax documentation and source of funds letters." Kiana lifted her gaze. "The verification packet is linked to my profile. My name is Kiana Brooks." Susan's smile didn't reach her eyes. "And I'm Beyoncé." She extended a manicured hand, palm up. "Documents, please." Across the room, private banker Tyler Watt's charcoal suit, silver tie clip, watched with the lazy interest of a cat eyeing a mouse it already judged slow. 2 associates, Emma Ruiz and Brady Collins, lingered near the welcome bar, pretending to sort brochures. Kiana tapped her tablet awake, navigated to a real-time statement dwarfing the branch's quarterly deposits, and eased it across the table. Before the screen cleared its facial ID lock, Tyler ambled over. His elbow accidentally clipped the edge, sending the device tumbling onto the carpet with a soft thud. "Whoops," he said, not bothering to apologize. "Maybe keep expensive toys at home." Kiana retrieved the tablet, checked for cracks, and placed it back on the table. She had seen this maneuver before, first at 23, when a mortgage officer laughed at the idea that she, a black realtor, fresh off her first commission, could possibly move 6 figures in escrow. Again at 30, when a competitor tried to block her from a hotel acquisition by labeling her high risk. Each time, calm had been her sharpest blade. She inhaled, exhaled, and made another mental note, Tyler documented. "It's 12:07, she said, eyes on Susan. "I'd like the withdrawal completed by 12:15. Your system holds my notarized portfolio, my control letters, and a standing approval from Treasury Services. Please execute." Susan folded her arms. "Or we escort you out. Fraud attempts rise at quarter end." "You fit the pattern." "Pattern?" Kiana asked softly. "Unverified walk-in requesting 6 figures in cash," Susan replied. "Designer fakes second-hand blazer, attitude the size of Midtown." Kiana resisted a smile. The blazer was off the rack. Yes, the last unconquered prejudice was always cloth. "Run the correct tier," she said. Tyler clicked his tongue. "Tier 0's good enough for personal checking. Don't waste our bandwidth." A young black analyst in the corner, Jada Clark badge, a shade too large for her lapel, shifted uncomfortably. "Tier 0 won't show institutional control accounts," she murmured. Susan's head snapped toward her. "Sit down, Jada. This isn't a classroom." Kiana's phone buzzed. She answered under her breath. "Mila, initiate protocol Veritas." On the other end, her executive aide responded, "Stage 1 live." Susan's brows knitted. "You think some code word frightens me?" "No," Kiana said, checking her watch again, 12:08. "But facts should." In the quiet that followed, she could almost feel the branch's network slowing, as Veritas pinned open every audit log. She folded her hands, leaned back, and waited for the first crack to appear. The first crack arrived 20 seconds later, exactly as Kiana predicted. Emma Ruiz's workstation let out a plaintive beep and flashed Remote Compliance Override read-only mode. She tapped her mouse twice, frowned, then whispered to Brady, "My ledger frozen." Brady tried his own terminal and got the same red banner. A thin line of sweat bloomed at his hairline. He wiped it and kept clicking as if sheer insistence could bend code. Susan noticed the commotion and snapped, "What now?" Emma stammered, "System lockdown, ma'am. Looks like an external audit tunnel just opened." Tyler's posture shifted from smug to wary. He returned to his desk, hoping to outflank the freeze, but his screen refused even a simple lookup. All peripherals, card readers, cash drawer indicators sat dark, humming like appliances without power. Kiana remained still, thumbs loosely intertwined eyes, following none of it, yet missing nothing. Veritas always started quietly testing for interference, then tightening its grip. At 12:09, the lounge lights flickered. Not a blackout, just a voltage dip triggered by the building's own smart grid, reporting suspicious load spikes. That was Stage 1's calling card. A ghost tapping the circuitry to remind rogue employees electricity itself could testify. Susan masked unease with volume. "Security," she barked. Two guards appeared, Darren Lowe and his partner Caleb Rhodes. Darren's size filled half the entryway, but his confidence faltered when card scanners wouldn't unlock the concealed panic panel for override. "Badge failure," Caleb muttered. Susan motioned him aside. "Escort her to holding until IT clears this." Darren approached. "Ma'am, please come with us." Kiana's voice was low, but resonant. "Before you put hands on me, scan my ID into the compliance tier, called Crown." She slid a black metal card across the table. Darren hesitated. Susan gestured irritably. "Humor her." Caleb retrieved a portable reader, but the moment the chip met the sensor, the handheld vibrated and displayed Board Observer Priority Access granted. Then, in larger font, "Do not detain." Darren's eyes darted to Susan. "The device says she outranks branch authorization." Tyler scoffed, glitch. Yet a synchronized chime rustled the lounge, a dozen phones pinging in unison, with an alert from Headquarters Live. "Ethics Review, Midtown Flagship. All staff cooperate." Clients finally lifted their heads. A silver-haired attorney near the espresso machine murmured, "That's above regional." A graduate student filming earlier set her phone down, sensing the room had become evidence without her lens. Susan doubled down. "She triggered this lockdown. We've got probable cause." Her voice cracked on probable. Kiana met her gaze. "Probable cause requires facts, not frustration. Run my last name in Tier Crown. Now." Susan's jaw tightened. She marched to Tyler's terminal, useless. "Manual forms, then," she muttered, digging out a paper KYC packet like a relic from a pre-digital decade. 12:12. Mila's text slid onto Kiana's watch face. Stage 2 engaged. Audit feed streaming to board. Perfect timing. Jada, still seated halfway across, cleared her throat. "Ms. Langley, our internal policy states any Crown tier alert supersedes branch discretion. We must verify at that level before enforcement." Her voice trembled, but held. Tyler snapped, "Stay out of this, intern." Jada stood. Analyst. She lifted her badge so everyone could read it. The older attorney spoke louder now. "Manager, you might want to listen. Crown tier means controlling interest." Murmurs rippled. The balance in the room tilted, intangible, yet undeniable. Susan's reply was cut short by the ring of the branch landline. Emma answered, turned sheet white, and handed the receiver to Susan. "Regional oversight," she whispered. Susan pressed it to her ear. Whatever she heard siphoned color from her cheeks. She hung up without a word, then faced Kiana. Is this some kind of hostile probe? Kiana finally rose. Her chair eased back with a muted sigh, the only sound in an audience holding its breath. Not hostile, she said. Diagnostic. Hostility is what you supplied. Tyler gathered courage for one last swing. Lady Money talks, and yours hasn't spoken. Kiana reached into her folio, produced a single sheet, embossed with Stellar's sunburst seal, and laid it flat on the table. Tyler leaned in, his face drained. Susan stepped forward. Read 2 lines, stumbled back a half step. Control. Ownership. Conditional termination authority. Kiana set a fingertip on the paper's margin, like a signature locking into place. Your system's frozen because the owner asked how her clients are treated when she isn't wearing a title on her lapel, she said. So far, the answer is badly. The clock struck 12:13. The first crack had widened into a fault line, and everyone in the lounge could feel the floor begin to shift. The shift felt physical. A tremor of silence rippled across the lounge, as though everyone sensed they were now standing over that widening fault line. Susan's stern facade flickered. She opened her mouth, searching for the next order, but no words came. Tyler, jittery hands shoved deep in his pockets, leaned over Kiana's document again, as if a second reading might dissolve the ink that named her majority owner. It didn't. Emma Susan rasped, "At last, get it, have them reverse whatever override this is." Emma didn't move. Her headset still blared the oversight hold tone that meant senior compliance officers were already inside the server. "They're already on," she whispered. They said hands off. Across the room, Darren adjusted his security blazer, suddenly unsure what his uniform meant. He glanced at Kiana, then back to Susan. "Manager, do we stand down?" Susan's chin lifted defiance, fighting dread. "Protocol or not, no one hijacks my branch." Tyler, initiate an external verification call. Tyler jabbed at his phone and stepped away. Kiana listened to each digit he dialed, then to the flat tone that answered. Headquarters had isolated outbound lines. Tyler cursed under his breath and called 911 instead, voice pitched high with urgency. Possible financial fraud. 6-figure withdrawal suspect triggering system-wide lockdown. He emphasized suspect like a hammer hitting the same nail. Kiana watched him finish, then tapped her smartwatch. Mila, stage 3. A chime echoed in every overhead speaker, brief, single, inescapable. Screens around the lounge lit with a banner, live ethics feedboard viewing. Even the espresso machine let out a hiss like a gasp. Jada approached Kiana, eyes wide. They looped the entire board. "That's never happened." "It happens," Kiana said softly, "when silence is more dangerous than truth." Caleb, the second guard, leaned toward Darren. "If she's the owner, that 911 call is baseless. False reporting." Darren swallowed hard. "We may be witnesses, not enforcers." Susan heard them. Fury flared. "You're paid to secure this branch, secure it." But her voice cracked on the last word. No one moved. At 12:15, the glass doors slid open, and 2 detectives stepped in, shoes echoing on stone. Detective Harris led, notebook ready. Susan surged forward. "Officer, thank goodness this woman is disrupting." Harris raised a hand for quiet eyes scanning the on-screen banners. "Owner present?" he asked plainly. Kiana nodded. "Yes, I'm exercising internal oversight." She offered the embossed sheet. Harris read the letterhead, skimmed the clauses, then leveled a calm stare at Susan. "Manager, did you verify Crown Tier credentials?" Before calling, Susan's lips parted, but only a strangled sound escaped. Tyler jumped in. "She refused documents, claimed some secret protocol." "She presented digital credentials," Jada interjected. "Manager declined to view them." Harris jotted a note. "That's going in the report." Tyler's frustration ignited into recklessness. "She's gaming you. Look at her blazer. Look at those shoes, does that scream?" Majority owner Kiana met his glare. "Wealth doesn't scream. Insecurity does." A subdued laugh fluttered from a few clients. The silver-haired attorney folded his arms with visible satisfaction. Emma's monitor pinged again, another compliance alert. "Manager," she said, voice thin, "head office. Just suspended your admin rights." Susan's shoulders slumped centimeters. Kiana addressed the detectives. "No arrests. I'll handle discipline internally. Your presence documents the sequence. That's sufficient." Harris nodded. "We'll stand by until your board confirms." Behind him, the grad student who'd stopped filming raised her hand timidly. "Ms. Brooks, may I ask something? If they knew sooner who you were, would it have changed anything?" "It shouldn't have to," Kiana replied. "And that's the point." A hush settled heavier than any alarm. Tyler's phone buzzed. He looked and went pale. Corporate HR requesting immediate conference. Brady licked dry lips. "Susan, maybe we should listen." Susan stared at the floor she'd paced for years, as if hoping it might swallow her before the board could. When she finally spoke, the words were small. "What do you want?" "Ms. Brooks' accountability," Kiana said. "And we start with truth." She turned toward the room. "Anyone here who's felt ignored or profiled, step forward. Your voice enters the record now." The invitation struck like a bell. A young mother nursing paperwork for a small business loan raised her hand. A veteran with a prosthetic leg wheeled forward. Each face carried its own quiet grievance, suddenly emboldened by the owner's presence. Kiana gestured to Jada. "You'll document testimonies. Effective immediately, you act as interim compliance liaison." Jada's breath caught. "Yes, ma'am." Susan closed her eyes, pressed fingers to her temples, and the clock above the lounge ticked to 12:18, marking only 5 minutes since the fault line first cracked open, yet long enough for the ground beneath Stellar Trust Bank to begin a permanent shift. The wall clock still showed 12:18 when the first voice rose. "I've been here 4 times." The young mother began paperwork, wobbling in her grip. "Each visit they lost my child care center application. Tyler told me to try a smaller bank, said we weren't their demographic." Her cheeks flushed at the memory, but her tone stayed steady under Kiana's nod of permission. Before anyone could respond, the veteran rolled his chair forward. A carbon fiber prosthetic peeked beneath neatly pressed slacks. "Mortgage pre-approval was fine. Until I walked in for closing," he said. "Manager Langley decided a disability stipend was unstable income. Deal died that day." Jada typed furiously, logging every word into a fresh compliance file that synced, thanks to Veritas, straight to the board cloud. Susan watched the testimonies accumulate color, draining with each keystroke. Brady shifted from foot to foot, as though the marble floor had turned to ice. Detective Harris closed his notebook. "We're officially mere observers," he murmured to his partner. The grad student who'd tried filming earlier now helped an elderly Latina couple step forward. Their English was halting, but their frustration universal. 3 declined wire transfers to a grandson's tuition because the amounts were deemed suspiciously rounded. By 12:21, Mila's text filled Kiana's watch. Stage 423, buried complaints located 19, tagged duplicate, by Langley or Watts. A second line followed almost instantly. Board requests live statement from branch manager. Kiana looked up. "Ms. Langley, the board would like to hear you justify those duplicate tags." Susan's throat worked, but no sound escaped. Tyler barked. "Data can be messy. Duplicates happen." "Duplicates," Kiana repeated. "All from women of color and veterans, statistically fascinating." Emma flinched. She had signed 2 of those dismissals under Susan's instruction. "Manager said they'd clog the metrics," she whispered. Her confession hung in the air like smoke. Darren, still near the entry, swallowed hard. "If these are true, our entire security flag matrix is compromised." "It was never security," Kiana said. "It was bias wearing a badge." Behind her, lounge monitors blinked. The stellar boardroom streamed in 12 directors, seated beneath a backlit logo. Chairwoman, Dr. Elaine Morgan, spoke first voice, amplified through hidden ceiling speakers. "Branch staff, you are on record. The owner has invoked Article 9. Provide explanation or accept immediate disciplinary action." Susan's shoulders sagged. I followed patterns handed to me when I took over. High-risk profiles. Legacy guidelines. Dr. Morgan cut in. Legacy ends today. Kiana turned to Tyler. You filed a false police report. That alone violates state statute. Tyler's bravado shattered. Look, I thought she was scamming us. Protocol says escalate fast. You fabricated the threat, Jada corrected, scrolling the policy on her tablet. Protocol 47 requires documentary refusal before law enforcement. She pointed at the lounge camera now streaming boardside. There was none. Kiana inhaled slow and deliberate. Effective immediately, Susan Langley terminated for systemic discrimination and obstruction. Tyler Watts terminated for harassment and false reporting. Emma Ruiz and Brady Collins suspended pending audit review. Emma's knees nearly buckled. Brady caught her arm, stunned silent. Tyler lurched a step, as if to argue, but Darren moved between them, authoritative, now that he understood who held the gavel. Escort them to HR, Kiana ordered. Darren complied, guiding the stunned employees toward a side corridor. Susan paused in the doorway, eyes glazed. We hit our numbers, she whispered. The board valued that. Kiana met her look with something between pity and resolve. The board values integrity more than numbers starting this minute. At 12:24, a new banner slid across every screen. Equity First pilot launching now. Kiana addressed the remaining staff and clients. For 48 hours, this branch will pause all new transactions. During that window, we implement verbal conduct audits, remove bias markers, and retrain every role from teller to VP. A ripple of cautious applause spread. The young mother released a shaky breath. The veteran tapped his wheel rim in assent. Even Detective Harris allowed a faint smile. That's one way to skip paperwork, he muttered. Jada closed the testimony file, hands trembling with adrenaline. Kiana placed a steady palm on her shoulder. You'll head the audit team locally. Report directly to Dr. Morgan. Jada's eyes glistened. I won't let you down. I know, Kiana replied. The lounge only minutes earlier, a theater of suspicion, now felt like a courtroom after verdict, the tension replaced by a fragile but growing hope. Kiana glanced at the clock, 12:26. 8 minutes since the first crack, yet an era had ended. She exhaled, readying herself for the work of rebuilding, even as the echoes of fired heels receded down the corridor. The echo of Susan's departing heels had barely faded when Darren returned alone, shutting the side corridor door with uncharacteristic care. The lounge clock still read 12:27, but the room's atmosphere had flipped from brittle to expectant. Each client seemed to sit taller, as if fresh oxygen had been pumped through the vents. Kiana faced the remaining staff, Darren, Caleb, and a handful of stunned tellers summoned from their stations when the freeze hit. We aren't finished, she said, voice calm, yet edged with resolve. Cleaning house means pulling every root, not just the visible vines. Who here managed security flagging over the last year? Darren's jaw flexed. That'd be me under Susan's directives. He hesitated, then stepped forward till the board's live camera framed him squarely. Ma'am, the Matrix wasn't about threat levels. We tagged people who asked too many fee questions, spoke with accents, or his gaze flicked to the veteran's prosthesis, looked unconventional financially. Tyler approved each tag. Kiana nodded once. How many? 78 total. 42 active. He swallowed. Mostly women of color, freelancers, elderly immigrants. Mila's voice came through Kiana's earpiece. Stage 5 confirmed flag list retrieved. Board observing. Detective Harris raised a brow. That's a civil rights minefield. It's a human minefield, Kiana corrected, then turned to Darren. You've admitted complicity. Why? Because power gave orders and fear obeyed. He said shoulders heavy. And because until 5 minutes ago, no one at the top ever said otherwise. The confession landed with a thud of honesty that drew respectful silence rather than scorn. Kiana addressed the board camera. Recommend immediate purge of security tags, mandatory review of every rejected application tied to them, and restitution where warranted. Dr. Morgan's voice answered approved. Implement at branch and system-wide within 30 days. Caleb exhaled audibly. One teller beside him whispered, "Thank God." Kiana refocused on the clients. Each of you who spoke will receive a written apology fee reversals and priority processing. Jada will coordinate. Jada's fingers hovered over her tablet, then flew again, documenting directives she'd once only dreamed of giving. A notification chimed regional HR escorts had arrived to collect the suspended employee's credentials. Through the glass, Tyler's silhouette appeared briefly in the hallway, rage-spent shoulders folded inward. The sight drew no pity, only closure. 12:31. A low buzz vibrated Kiana's watch, external social feeds exploding as whispers of the showdown leaked. She ignored it. Reform wasn't a spectacle. It was maintenance. "Darren," she said, "you breached protocol, yet owned your part. Resignation is appropriate, but penance can be service. You want redemption." His nod was immediate earnest. "Yes, ma'am." "Then you stay. But you'll rebuild security under Jada's audit, not above it. First assignment, design entry procedures that protect without profiling." A murmur of approval rolled across the lounge. The veteran tapped his wheel rim again, twice now, like a slow-building drumbeat of trust. Detective Harris closed his notebook. "From our angle, Ms. Brooks, no criminal action today. But if evidence of deliberate fraud emerges, it'll be corporate, not criminal," Kiana replied. "We'll handle the damages internally and publicly post the numbers. Sunlight is the best antiseptic." The grad student who'd earlier tried to film raised a tentative hand. "May we share what happened? People need to see change as possible." Kiana met her eyes. "Share the outcome, not the outrage. Show them policy. Show them correction. Show them that speaking up works. Outrage alone is a match. Reform is the light that stays." A gentle ping sounded overhead, the espresso machine completing a cycle it had begun minutes before the upheaval. The hiss felt like a curtain drop, marking Act One's end and Act Two's labor. Kiana motioned toward the machine. "Someone pour everyone coffee. We have forms to rewrite." Laughter, soft relieved, bloomed around the room. Caleb hustled to the counter, clinking cups with nervous enthusiasm. The young mother received the first mug, her paperwork now stamped "Priority" in bold red. She mouthed thank you, and Kiana answered with a nod that carried the weight of an owner who finally felt her institution aligning with her name. At 12:35, Mila's final update for the stage scrolled "Legacy bias metrics disabled. Equity first dashboards live. Board adjourned with unanimous support." Kiana drew a breath deep enough to settle her pulse, then addressed the group once more. "We'll stay closed to new money until every employee signs a values pledge, spoken aloud, recorded, and attached to their HR file. When the doors reopen, no client will wonder if they're welcome. They'll know." The veteran raised a cup in salute. The young mother mirrored him. A bridge of porcelain and steam linked strangers who 15 minutes earlier had shared only a quiet room and invisible skepticism. Darren glanced at the ticking clock. "Ms. Brooks, the teller lines are jammed with freeze alerts. Want me to clear them?" "Let them wait," Kiana said. "Trust deserves the cue today." And as she stepped aside so Jada could brief the assembled staff on the first phase of audits, the lounge lights brightened a notch. Automatic sensors registering the increased movement perhaps, or the algorithm simply convinced sunlight had found its way in. The lights that brightened a notch seemed to cue the next act. Staff who remained gathered instinctively around Jada as she opened a fresh dashboard on the nearest monitor. Color-coded tiles flashed red for pending apology, amber for flag under review, green for cleared. It looked like a war table, except the enemy was old habit. Kiana let the room settle before speaking. "We have 72 hours to turn this pilot into a template. Jada, you own Phase 1 verbal conduct audits and restitution tracking. Darren, draft new entry protocols by end of day and test them on the people here who were profiled. They get to decide if it feels fair." Darren nodded, no trace of the earlier swagger, just intent focus. I'll pull the old badge logs too. Anything suspicious goes straight to compliance. A teller raised her hand, voice small. What about us frontline? We were told to upsell preferred posture clients. It's baked into our pitch scripts. Scripts change, Kiana answered. We write them in this room with clients listening. Outside the glass walls, a different crowd was forming. Local reporters, curious passers-by, two rival bankers craning their necks. Caleb drifted over. Media wants comment. They can see the freeze on the lobby screens. Tell them a statement follows after we fix the reasons, Kiana said. Substance first, sound bites later. 12:40. Mila patched in again. External social feeds trending. Hashtags, Jack Equity First, and Hadyar Bank Owner Showdown cresting. Board greenlights controlled release of audit metrics once verified. Kiana smiled thinly. Sunlight works fast on the internet. At the dashboard, Jada's eyes widened. Ma'am, buried in the email archive, there's a thread labeled triage. Looks like Susan and Tyler coordinated penalty fees on the flagged clients. Over $80,000 collected. The veteran wheeled closer. They made money off bias. We'll make restitution off truth, Kiana said. Document every cent. Clients choose refund or charitable match. Emma, suspended, but still in the building, peeked from the corridor, guilt carved across her face. I signed some of those approvals, she whispered. If testimony helps, I'll give it. You'll testify, Kiana agreed. Then complete the same training as everyone else. Redemption is possible, but transparency is mandatory. A vibration shuddered through Darren's new security tablet. He glanced and whistled. Regional just pushed your no-profile entry template live to the other flagship branches. They want us to host a Q&A in 2 hours. Fine, Kiana said. We'll stream from here. Let the system that failed watch how to fix itself. 12:48. The young mother finished her coffee, walked to the counter, and handed Caleb her documents again. He scanned them through the now unlocked terminals. The freeze on her application lifted in seconds, tile turning green on Jada's board. Tears filled her eyes. Relief, not frustration this time. The room applauded unprompted. Momentum built. Each success ticked another light toward full brightness, as if the building measured justice in lumens. Kiana fielded a call from Dr. Morgan Legislative Subcommittee on Financial Equity. Wants your briefing next week. Tell them they can watch our livestream, Kiana replied. First, we finish the work. By 12:55, Darren presented his draft. No more discretionary ID challenges, randomized spot checks to avoid bias patterns, biometric entry optional, and encrypted. The veteran tested the new flow, returning with a thumbs up, and a quiet feels dignified. Kiana turned to the staff. You've seen how fast rot spreads. Now watch how fast repair can too. We broke silence today. Tomorrow, we build systems that don't need a spotlight to behave. Phones buzzed again. Mila's final stage 6 ping. All legacy risk tags deleted. Equity dashboards active across 6 branches. Board adjourned pending evening review. Kiana exhaled. Phase 1, complete. Let's brief the press. Caleb opened the lounge doors. Midday sun spilled across the threshold, almost theatrical. Reporters leaned forward, microphones ready. But before stepping out, Kiana looked back at the clients still inside, people, sipping repaired trust like fresh coffee. Ready? Darren asked. Ready, she said, then added more to herself than anyone. This time, the light stays on. Kiana stepped into the sunlight as if crossing a threshold between 2 versions of her bank, the one that had hidden prejudice under polished chrome, and the one now willing to show its seams, while it stitched them anew. Camera shutters clacked. Reporters shouted overlapping questions, but she raised a hand for quiet and waited. The street hushed, microphones lowered like obedient periscopes. I'll be brief, she began, voice carrying without strain. Today, Stellar Trust Bank admitted it acted beneath its own name. Instead of protecting clients, we profiled them. Instead of earning trust, we taxed it. That ends now. A murmur rolled through the press line. Even traffic at the curb seemed to idle. Behind Kiana, The lounge's glass wall reflected sunlight onto the pavement, throwing soft halos around everyone who'd remained inside. She continued, "We've launched the Equity First program verbal conduct audits at every flagship branch, restitution for affected clients, and a standing invite for public oversight. Our doors reopen only after every employee signs a values pledge, recorded on video and attached to their personnel file." A reporter from the Atlanta Daily raised his hand. "Ms. Brooks' critics will say, this is performative. How do you ensure it isn't forgotten after the news cycle?" "By tying compliance to compensation," she replied. "Bias metrics will weigh in annual reviews. Bonuses shrink when empathy does. And the dashboards you see behind me will remain public-facing." She gestured to the lounge monitors, now angled toward the street green, amber-red tiles updating in real time. "We'll be judged by what stays red." Another journalist shouted, "Will anyone face criminal charges? Internal reform first, law enforcement. If obstruction continues," she said. "But the larger crime is cultural. We dismantle that by engineering transparency into every transaction." She turned slightly, so cameras could catch the board's banner, still looping over the monitors. "Sunlight is our safeguard." Questions kept coming. Stock price impact, shareholder sentiment, legal exposure. She answered each, succinctly refusing deflection, but offering no theatrics. After 10 minutes, she ended with, "Trust is the only currency that appreciates without interest. We intend to be wealthy in it." Then, she stepped back, signaling Darren to close the doors. Inside applause met her return, not wild, but steady like a heartbeat, finding normal rhythm. The young mother now held an approval letter. The veteran scrolled a tablet showing reduced closing costs. Their gratitude was quiet, and that pleased Kiana more than any headline. She gathered the staff and clients into a loose circle. "Phase 2 starts now," she said. "Jada, schedule listening forums. Clients lead, we listen. Darren, rotate your team through those sessions, badges off duty. Empathy can't wear armor." Caleb would coordinate a live-stream Q&A with other branches, while Emma, still suspended, volunteered to draft an internal memo admitting her part in the duplicate complaint scheme. Kiana approved truth, authored by the formerly silent carried weight spreadsheets could not. At 14:00 sharp, the first remote branch dialed in. Dozens of faces, tellers, managers, security leads filled the wall display. Some looked defensive, others eager, many simply curious. Kiana opened with a single slide, a timeline of the past 2 hours, mapped against policy breaches and corrective actions. Every bullet linked to a live document accessible by anyone with a Stellar login. "Here is our mistake," she said, "and here is the blueprint you'll follow to avoid it." Questions flowed. What if a regional manager resists? How do we label a bias incident? Who audits the auditors? Kiana fielded them, or passed them to Jada, who responded with newfound authority. When a skeptical branch director asked whether lost fees from flagged surcharges would hurt revenue targets, Kiana answered, "Short-term, yes. Long-term, clients stay. Lawsuits don't happen. Talent applies. Integrity compounds." As the call wrapped, Dr. Morgan appeared on screen. "Board update. Equity First metrics go live on the investor portal tomorrow. Market reaction is secondary to moral necessity." She looked at Kiana. "Well done." Kiana muted the mic and exhaled. Around her, the lounge buzzed with a purpose she hadn't felt in years. No one glanced at the clock. Work was guided by urgency, not overtime. Evening softened the sunlight slanting through glass. The last clients departed with apologies printed and refunds queued. Jada locked the dashboard, its tiles now mostly amber and green. Darren posted a sign on the door, "Branch closed for integrity, reset reopens, 9 a.m. Monday. Kiana lingered after everyone filed out. She walked the perimeter, fingertips brushing the cool glass where bias had once been invisible, but thick. She pictured tomorrow's staff rehearsing spoken pledges, clients entering without a single doubting glance, dashboards glowing green. It would not be perfect. Culture rarely obeyed policy overnight. Yet the light, once switched on, tended to find every corner. As she powered down the last monitor, Mila's voice chimed through her earpiece. Social sentiment up 70% positive. Clients in chat asking how to donate to the restitution fund. Kiana smiled. Tell them to invest the money in their communities. We're busy investing in ours. She stepped into the corridor, lights dimming behind her, and felt no need to look back. The bank would be there in the morning, different, brighter, accountable. And for the first time since she'd signed the acquisition papers, she believed the building deserved her name on its deeds.